Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm MacKenzie Wilson alongside my co-host Chris Noble. Chris Noble, what do we got in stock for tonight's show?
Well, you kind of been letting me know what you've been working on, and I've been working pretty heavily on getting one of my rentals up and running, and Mac's been working pretty hard on bringing some great stuff to the show tonight. And I understand you got something going on with the Landlord Credit Bureau, and we got a real special guest tonight.
Well, there's been a lot, right? People got emails back in, I want to say it was October. They said, did I get on a spam list? There's a front lobby email me now asking about credit checks and all this stuff, and they didn't think it was real. And well, Landlord Credit Bureau is now front lobby. What does that even mean? I don't know what that means. So we'll have that conversation tonight. Landlord Credit Bureau has been with us for some time. They are probably one of my favorite tools when I first got into landlording because we got the ability to be the powerhouse, to be like banks and car dealers that could check and pull credit reports and affect credit reports with trade lines if a tenant chooses not to pay rent or damages their property. So super cool tool. We'll get into how that works, but they're now called front lobby, and I don't even know, Chris. We got to figure out what that means because I don't know.
Yeah, I'm anxious to put that question right to Grant right off the get go. So let's go get him. He's backstage getting his makeup on, and see if he's done his coffee, and we'll bring him out. So we'll see you all
Yeah,
in a few minutes.
absolutely. I've got. I'll have to find who this is. Apparently, they have shaved. So yes. And then hey, look at this, Gord Heisler. A long time no see. I'll have to go say hi to this guy. I haven't seen him forever. So Gord, glad to have you on the show tonight. This will be a good one. So you're right, Chris. Without further ado, let's get Grant Burwash on the show.
Okay, see you folks shortly. There we go. We
That
are
intro
live.
just gets better every time.
There you go. Yeah, Grant, good to have you on the show. I should have asked. I did pronounce your last name correctly, right? Burwash.
You did, yeah.
Oh, good, good.
Right on. Welcome,
It
Grant.
makes me a little bit nervous when I
Excited
don't
to have you.
confirm things and I second guess my pronunciation. So I'm glad we got that right. Yeah. So exciting show. These are always good. Probably I know Chris and I are going to be more flies on the wall as we ask you questions with the rest of the audience because you guys have lots of changes going on. You're now front lobby, formerly Landlord Credit Bureau. So tell us what's that's all about, Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've always been more than a credit bureau. And so in October, as you mentioned, we changed the vast majority of our services to now fall under the name Front Lobby. And for most users, it doesn't actually change the functionality. So if you're already a member of Landlord Credit Bureau, you now log in and interface with the brand Front Lobby. And the idea with this is it was meant to be a little bit more consumable. So then when tenants actually interact with it the first time, there seems to be less pushback. Yeah, you still, as landlords, have that weight behind you of having Landlord Credit Bureau that you can actually report to. So Landlord Credit Bureau still exists. It now just pertains the name to the reporting agency, which houses and stores those verified tenant records. So we'll get into that a bit more tonight, what that specifically means. But essentially what that means is you as a landlord can sign into Front Lobby. You can screen your tenants by pulling credit checks. You can send information to Equifax. You can send information to Landlord Credit Bureau. You can pull information from both those. But you can also use Front Lobby for your internal record keeping purposes. You can send emails to tenants and those sort of aspects. So it gives this kind of smoother interface that becomes a little bit more appealing towards tenants, partners, landlords. It's kind of more on brand. And then you have the Credit Bureau, which still offers all the services that you've known and loved from the Credit Bureau that we've operated for several years.
Okay.
Nice,
Well,
nice. So I'm going to ask a burning question in my mind, and I see someone's already brought it up. So I'm going to bring Christine's comment up and ask mine. Say, your rebranding. Um, in my mind, as a landlord, I see the Landlord Credit Bureau. That gives me like, boom! I got some punch. I got some. You know what? I'm going to be able
Bark
to
has
collect my
bite.
debt. But yeah, it's got bite and it's got punch. But so how does front lobby and landlord credit bureau, how does that all tie together so that when we hear the word front lobby, we know we still got the same punch as a landlord to help us collect that debt?
Yeah, of course. So you still have the same benefits through front lobby in the aspect that it reports to Equifax and reports to Landlord Credit Bureau. So when you're speaking specifically about a debt, like they will notice that impact on their credit. We do also have credit notifications that will go out from Landlord Credit Bureau. So that name will still be affiliated with those debts. It'll be sent out just notifying those tenants that they do have a debt that has been reported against that credit bureau, which does prompt a lot of conversations. So with the emails and the communication tools that we do have, a lot of it is to try and drive communication between those tenants and those landlords. So if someone does owe you a debt, or if they want to help build their credit, like we want them to be interacting with their landlord, because proactive communication is always better than trying to avoid rental payments or things like that. So throughout the learnings over the past year, as we've been going through, like we've made a bunch of changes to just try and drive those conversations earlier. But yet you still have the benefits that if there is a debt, like there is a lot of services that we can offer that kind of have those escalating impacts just depending on the situation that you do find yourself in.
Oh, right on.
So I know you mentioned in the back room when Chris hit. So we're basically rehashing a question because this is basically what we asked 5 minutes before the show, and it was a really good explanation he gave. You notice that when you had done the initial sign up with new tenants coming on to the landlord credit bureau, that there's a bit of a pushback. The tenants weren't quite game to say sign up for the service because they didn't know what was in for them. So we
That's
went
right.
to this front lobby, really kind of help allow new tenants to sign up to the platform, which is great because we want that as landlords to do the credit reporting. But are you still using the Landlord Credit Bureau name to report these trade lines to Equifax?
So the name will change slightly because the company's changed. So when you look at that trade line, it will now say front lobby
Okay.
because that's the person that's actually sharing the information. Now, if you pull a credit check from us, you might get information from Equifax and you could get information that comes from Landlord Credit Bureau. So Landlord Credit Bureau doesn't share information with Equifax. It is a credit bureau. So it kind of, you can think of it in the same way you would think of Equifax.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there different information coming from the two sources? Why could we get information from one over the other?
Yeah, so the front lobby and for sorry, when you pull through from front lobby, like the landlord credit bureau information is going to have those tenant records. So it'll show those monthly payment breakdowns. It can show late payments. It can also show the email and the contact name or the company name of the landlord that's furnished that information. So one important aspect of the rental industry is obviously tenant screening. So when you're talking through trying to get those references, what we provide is that introduction of the email to the landlord that provided that information so that you can reach out and contact them. And then you can ask those whatever questions and you know that that's the actual landlord because they've gone through identity verification and they've actually provided the information to the credit bureau.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Chris, you want to add
Nice.
anything on that?
No,
And
that's good.
I'll
Good.
maybe jump in. You had mentioned about some of the tenants. So one of our goals is we want to help as many tenants as possible to build up their credit. And so we want to make their initial interactions with you as a landlord through this product to be very positive. And so throughout this process, we're trying to reduce some of that friction as you as users and your tenants go through that onboarding process. So then there's a lot better education, there's a lot better onboarding. So they do want to consent to building their credit. So I'm sure we'll talk about this later on tonight, but there's two aspects when it comes to consent. Like when there is a debt, consent is never required. But for a tenant to use our services to help build their credit, they do have to consent to having those positive payments reported to Equifax and Landlord Credit Bureau. And so you want them to have that positive experience and you want them to kind of engage with you and the platform.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight that. I think, Grant, you raised such a good point, and we see his questions. Chris and I see these questions time and time again where folks are, do I need permission to report debts? And you labeled it right there off the bat. I was going to highlight it again. You do not need permission to report debts or monies owed by a tenant, whether it be damages or a default in the contract by not paying the rent, for example. And there are some nuances on the difference of how you report this, in the sense that we'll talk about the different paperwork. But if this is to say and I'll let you get into this later, Grant, but I'm pretty excited about this, and we've talked about this before, where if a tenant has owes you rent, and it's contracted in your lease and there's money owed, you can go and report that, register a trade line without even going to RTDRS or getting a judgment, and that's a pretty powerful tool when you can do it and skip a lot of that paperwork.
Yeah.
A question about that is, I'm just trying to think around what other questions be out there. If someone doesn't have, let's say someone is into a month to month, there was no contract put into place, no lease was signed, nothing was signed. Somebody says, hey, this guy hasn't paid me for 5 months. Do they have to have paperwork to prove to you to back that claim?
They do.
Before you enter it?
Yeah. So you do need a signed lease. So that is different than some of the local tenancy branches. So, you can deem a lease without you can deem tenancy without a signed lease. And that may be kind of how it's ruled with the tenancy branch. But to report through us, you do require a signed lease, signed documentation.
And do they have to send a copy in to you?
They don't. So if there is ever a dispute or we do require that information, then the landlord would have to provide it. But we don't require you to upload the lease onto the platform when you start reporting on an individual.
So what are the consequences of messing around with that system? It'll happen. It'll happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's explicit language when you agree to our terms that you only furnish accurate data. So we do have a pretty robust dispute platform. So one of the benefits is tenants are able to view and verify the information. Every person on our platform has to go through identity verification in order to view or contribute any information. And so if we do find that there is malicious intent, or if we do find that information is flagged inaccurately, whether that comes to us from someone that flags someone with Equifax or someone that disputes something directly with our platform, we have a dispute team that would look into that. And if we do find that they're intentionally contributing false information, they would, of course, be banned from the platform.
And rightfully so. I would almost equate this to the same severity or equivalent of lying to your mortgage broker to get a lower down payment for a rental property when you need to do a conventional mortgage, or lying to Equifax or something, or all that kind of equivalent. I mean, if you get flagged, your name's going to get put in the database, and you won't be able to use these services in the future and hurt your reputation. It's simply not worth it.
Yeah, I mean,
and just to throw, go ahead.
Credit's important, right? I mean, everyone on this call has purchased a property, so we all know the benefits of building up good credit. And similar, when you as a landlord or a property manager are using the platform, it's important to make sure that data is accurate. So I'd say most of the time when people, a tenant would reach out, it's either that landlord hadn't quickly updated it, they paid the rent that morning and they hadn't updated the system that day or something like that. That's a majority of the inquiries we get on that matter. But, it is your obligation to make sure that that information is accurate. And we've got a lot of efficiencies built into the system that we automatically assume your tenants pay. We automatically assume your tenants are staying on time. So as long as you're logging in on a consistent basis, like every 60 days, and keeping that account active, you only have to actually report debts. But if you had reported a debt last month, it would kind of revert back to being paid on time for this month at the start, because we want to make sure there's a lot of protections to make sure that a bunch of those debts aren't just continued to being reported for those current tenants when it's likely that it's changing on a monthly basis.
Yeah. So there's an onus on the landlord to be up to date on the paperwork to keep the system going. Because I know there's like a 30-day delay or something before it gets pushed out to Equifax, and once that information's in there, it's very difficult to correct.
That's right. I mean, we have mediums to correct it, of course, but you are right. So we push out information on the middle of the month for the previous month. So perfect time that we're talking, it's the middle of November. We just shared October's rental data with Equifax, and the reason why that's important is for debts to be reported to any credit bureau, it has to be at least 30 days late. right? So if you think of how things are reported, whether you're with your credit cards or mortgages or, auto loans, those sort of things, any debt has to be at least 30 plus days late before it would ever show up on a credit report. And so that's why we have the reporting structure in place that we do.
Cool.
Nice. One of our big supporters of our Alberta landlord community is Gord Heisler with Casa Capital. He has quite a number of doors, and Gord's put a question up here, and he's a big fan of Landlord Credit Bureau. So
we're a big fan of Gord.
Oh yeah, good for you.
I'll put this question up here. Here it is.
Yeah.
I'll spit it out for you guys. So Gord says we have the Landlord Credit Bureau notification on our application and leases, getting permission to pull credit checks. Do we need a new permission using the new front lobby name? So basically, in his leases, he's hard-coded Landlord Credit Bureau. Does he need to change that to front lobby now to keep his leases compliant?
You shouldn't need to. I mean, it's good because then the wording would be a lot more consistent. But within those leases, within those clauses, it gives you the consent to access a credit report, which you could do through our system. But you are also reporting to the credit bureaus called Landlord Credit Bureau or Equifax. So it's not bad that it actually has Landlord Credit Bureau in there, because that is the reporting agency that you do report to. Now, Gord, there's always those clauses on our platform. So if you do want to update that, of course you can do that. But the clauses should still apply.
Perhaps put both names on, then you're covered. So.
Is that good, Grant? Could you put both names?
Yeah, I'd recommend, honestly, we have wording. So yeah, I would just copy and paste the updated wording. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, do you have something that we can access that we can get into our lease? Is there some wording for that?
We do. Yeah, we have them actually on our website. I can share the link with you afterwards, or if you go onto our website, whether it's from our help center or other places, you can find those clauses and clauses for the leases and the applications. As well as if you are logged into the app, you can click on resources and you can see them here. So I can actually show you if you want.
Yeah, if you guys kind of keep talking, I'll pull up my account and I'll do a screen share and I can find that.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I know where it is for you. So
that's great.
And
this is
one of the big, it's funny, Rich, before this, we were talking about these, and one of the big benefits is obviously it gives you consent to pull a credit report. As an added protection, if the tenant is wanting to opt in, they do actually have to physically or electronically do that within our application, just so then there is that record of consent, so they can use that to build their credit. But the biggest thing about having these from the rent reporting standpoint is it allows you to have that conversation with that tenant. So if I'm looking to rent from MacKenzie, he can say, Grant, we're reporting to the credit bureaus using front lobby. If you do have debts, that will be reflected, but this is a great opportunity. You can actually build up your credit by simply paying your largest expense every month with your rent. And it kind of allows you to flag whether that person is likely to be paying on time, or whether they, if they're a little skirtish around that is probably a pretty good indication that they won't be paying rent on time all the time.
Application and lease clauses right here.
That's right.
One thing to note, I'm just going to throw this out loud as we're thinking this through. So you guys do have the lease part where it gives you permission to pull credit, which is certainly good ongoing, in the sense that I know kind of a pro tip, if you have a tenant that's midnight moved on you, they're gone, they owe you probably $5,000 in unpaid rents and so on and so forth, utilities. If you've got this permission and you got the signed thing, you can pull a credit score or pull a credit check 6 months, maybe a year down from the last time you spoke with them. And typically you can kind of get information on where they're currently working or where they've moved to if you're trying to track down a tenant that's disappeared on you. So that's good. But I was just thinking out loud here, and perhaps, Grant, you may have already done this because I did see it on the applications, is you'd want to be doing the credit check and all that stuff before they sign the lease, because you want to ensure they're a good quality tenant to put on the lease. So do you guys got that verbiage as well?
Yes, that is in there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so there you'll see there's two. There's one for the application, which would provide you consent to pull credit checks. So within our application, when you're in our system, you don't need to actually show the lease or the application, as I mentioned, but you would just click the button to say that you do got consent through that application process, and then you'd be able to pull the credit check on that individual. And then if they do move in, of course, they can sign the lease. Another good opportunity to have that conversation with them about rent reporting, and then you can continue to report that rent throughout the duration of the tenancy.
Cool. Is there any other updates you want to touch base with this whole name change? If not, I have questions about specifics, but I want to see where you want to drive this conversation there, Grant.
Oh, we can go into specifics. I love it when you got questions that yours are probably matching what your members are. So let's go there.
Okay, so let's get into, you know what? Let's get into what new service offerings do you guys have, or just maybe Grant, quickly go over all the different services that we get with being a landlord with you guys.
For sure. So for free on our platform, we do offer record keeping. So you can always sign up for a free account with Front Lobby. You can store your tenant information as far as their payments details on a monthly basis. It's basic contact information like an email and phone numbers, those sort of aspects. As you're looking at some of those prospective tenants, we do have the ability to screen those tenants using those credit checks. So in maybe just about 6 weeks ago, we did launch the ability to pull credit checks within the system. So these are $10.99 for our premium members. So they're very reasonably priced. They are instant. So meaning if you've got a great tenant, you're looking to pull that information on them, they will show up near instantly within your account. Now, the one caveat to that is when you do to get access to them, there is a registration process that can take kind of 1 to 7 days before you have access to that feature. So best practice when you sign up for a Front Lobby account, just click on the tenant screening tab, click register. It's a couple clicks, it's free, it's instant. And that way, when you are looking to screen a tenant, you'll be able to just instantly get the credit report for them.
Awesome. And that's that piece you talked about where you guys validate the identity of the landlord. That's the part that probably takes a little bit of time depending.
That's right. Yeah, there's 2 steps with that. So there's the validation of the identity, there's the making sure you're a landlord, and then we have to share some of that information with Equifax as well. And that turnaround with Equifax is, of course, what takes that little bit of extra time. We're usually able to approve people near instantly on their ID and some of their other registration process. So that can usually be turned around within the day. Just when we have to share some of that details with Equifax. And when I say that, it doesn't impact your credit as a landlord. There's literally no impact to you. It's just a matter of that when you do pull that, we just have to make sure that a landlord is actually accessing that tenant data. So that's one of those components.
And that all makes sense. So if I remember correctly, I mean, I don't know if this has changed, but when I first did it, I was redirected to Equifax's website, and it had specific questions around my own personal credit history. Like, you have a bank account open up with ABC Bank, and I'd be like, click, yes. So long as you know your own credit history, you go through that process. It should be a quick turnaround. Though if there's mistakes and you have to do some manual verification, that's where you can take up to the 7
That's right.
days to get your identity.
Yeah, so you can do that through that process, which is called EID. It's provided by Equifax, and as you say, it asks you questions on your credit. It doesn't impact you. It's kind of, do you know what your history, and then they can approve you near instantly. If you don't wish to do that, or for some people it just doesn't work. I know the first time I tried to go through it, I moved from Canada to the US and all those sort of things, so it didn't really pick up on me. And so then that's not a problem. You can submit documentations and we can get you approved that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, sweet. So 1099 credit scores, that's by far the cheapest. I know the 2 other partners that we have on our page are at the $20 mark, and that's with the discount too, a 20% discount. So they have their credit check packaged in a application process, and that they handle the application on behalf of a landlord. Are you guys doing something similar, or how are you guys handling that? Is this just strictly a credit score that we're talking about?
Yeah, it's strictly a credit report. So it gives you a ton of information. It gives you the score, gives you employment, past addresses, trade lines, collections, inquiries, all those things that you want from the credit. It doesn't include things like criminal background checks. It doesn't include media screens or references or some of the other packages that other competitors would utilize, and it isn't embedded into an application process. So what we wanted to produce was a really affordable, very easy to read instant product that you could get, that when you're trying to make a decision, it's going to give you that relevant information as part of your screening process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So another question I'm going to ask you then. Do you guys collect any other information that the landlord could access? So I know best practice would be to verify the ID of the tenant, right? Make sure the tenant is who they say they are. So typically, I know part of my process is taking a copy of either a government issued ID, for example, passport or driver's license. Do you guys perform any of that kind of functionality, or is that something I still have to take responsibility for?
That'd be something you'd take responsibility for. So within the platform, if you are reporting on an individual and so they've already moved in, you can actually see whether they've verified their ID and viewed the information that you're reporting on them. That's more when someone's moved in, you're actually dealing with the reporting information to the credit bureaus, but we don't have the ID verification throughout that application process.
Okay, well, that's good to know. You know, this is a good segue when you're talking about communication. So you just mentioned a part there I'm really interested in. I can go and see if a tenant has opened up an email from you guys, part of that communication process. Do you have that kind of visibility?
You can.
Landlords?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, let's maybe starting with that rent reporting. So I found a great tenant. They've moved in. I now can just enter their basic details. You can do it two ways. So the tenant can either enter their information and invite you as a landlord, or you can enter that information and then it would get sent to the tenant via their email. So either way, you can have that information entered. On a monthly basis, you can choose to utilize some of our notification tools. So that means we'll send them an introduction email, which will outline what the platform is, that they can opt into the rent reporting. There's links to learn more so they can figure out what happens if there is a debt that is reported. You can also choose to send them monthly rental reminders. You can send them late payment notices, which are sent out within 48 hours of you actually recording a debt within the system. And then there are credit alerts that are also sent out from Landlord Credit Bureau as well. So those ones are a little different. Those, of course, won't show up within Front Lobby because they come from a different company. But within Front Lobby, we do have a new feature that's called the Activity Tracker. And what we wanted to provide was a lot more visibility to the landlords regarding what our system is actually doing and to try and drive that communication. So you can choose to be copied on all the emails that are sent to your tenants. You can also view within our system what emails were sent to the individuals and when. And then you can also see every month the information that's reported to the credit bureaus. So you can see whether someone was successfully reported or not. If they, let's say, have a positive history, but they haven't provided consent, you can see that, might want to prompt that tenant to kind of take advantage. You can also see that, okay, this debt or this payment was successfully reported. And so we've built in a bunch of these information components to try and help make sure that the maximum number of people are taking advantage of the system as possible.
Cool. So I think you answered it, but I'm going to ask just to make sure. As a landlord, I would want I'm particular about knowing how my tenant's being communicated with. Do I get to see the content or what exactly these emails look like that get sent out to the tenants?
Yeah, of course. So on any tenant that you enter, you can click on sample emails and you'll see exactly what it is. And we don't deviate from that as far as the automations that are sent out. A lot of them are written to be coming from you as their landlord. So we want to drive those communications between tenants and landlords. If a tenant does reach out to our support team, of course, we help them with things like the system. We help them with questions they may have, but we don't ever negotiate on your behalf, or we don't collect payments or those sort of things. So when it's pertinent, we do want to connect the tenant to the landlord if those conversations ever steer towards something like that.
Very cool. Love it. I'm looking at my activity tracker right now, and it's pretty cool. I can see a friendly rent reminder sent to my tenant on the September 25th at 7:17 p.m. A minute later, she opens it. Perfect. The next day, her boyfriend opens his. So I know within a day, they've both seen their rent reminder to pay November's rent the last week of September there. October.
MacKenzie,
so it looks great.
MacKenzie, you're using that. I just haven't got time to get saddled up with this.
Shame on you, Chris. I know it's been.
And it's my intention. It is my intention to use it. Don't get me wrong, but I guess I'm living too good of a life with my renters.
I'm just gonna roast you live on a show, just so you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no,
Well, that's a good problem to have.
yeah, no, it is. And it's like, okay, but I do have some history that I need to deal with, and that's my winter project with you guys, and I'll be learning the program inside and out. So this is great having me here because I'm like a lot of people, I don't know a lot about it behind the scenes. So um, I see, can we put Kayla's little comment up because she's our Ontario connection, and she makes a nice comment here.
So when showing your tenants the unit, inform them that you report their payments, their payment history. The ideal tenants will love it and fill out an application. The undesirable tenants, I wonder where that word for it came from, undesirable, will pass the application process. That's a little bit of a side hit at Chris. He came up with that marketing term that we use so widely now. But yeah, you know what? Kale's highlights a phenomenal point that I want to just kind of take off on this or add on to it in the fact that part of my screen process is in fact your guys' tool. It's a win-win. Tenants that come with good tenants that have credit scores or want to build a credit that have okay credit scores will want to rent because that's an additional advantage of renting with me. I'll help build a credit score. At the same time, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because the tenants that may are ill intent or malicious might come in to be a professional tenant and maybe take me for 6 months of rent before I can get them out. They're gonna get filtered out right at the front door before they even get a chance to see my application, let alone sign a lease. So very well protected. I have yet to come across a situation where it doesn't make sense or I've heard a reasonable objection to not doing this. So it's a phenomenal tool, and I was kind of bugging Grant in the background here about having well, I really appreciate you guys give us the verbiage to put into our leases, which obviously is critical, so we're compliant in that fashion. I just wanted, there's a bit of a psychology factor when you put your name to paper and you sign it, right? You're committing to something, whether the paper means something or not, it can have no legal weight or not, but when you sign your name, there's like, I'm making a promise to you that I want to keep. And I really liked previously you guys had was a 1-pager marketing material plus kind of a sign off for the tenant that was separate from the lease just to really have the emphasis of the tenant signing it. And I just found that's worked really well for me. So Katie, if you're watching, or Kayla, pass this on to the marketing team. My wishful request, but very, very cool. Okay. Have we covered all your features right now, Grant, that you guys are doing right now?
Well, I know one thing you wanted to talk about was debts. So maybe let's jump on that.
Let's get into the thick of it then.
Yeah. I know that's one of the hot topics here. So debts can be reported for both current and former tenants. So as we stated at the top of the call, consent is never required to report these debts. Just make sure the information is accurate, and it can take up to that 45 days for that information to get shared, because we would share the previous month's rental history in the middle of that month. So that's important to know. When you're looking at reporting debt for an individual, you would start, let's say I'm starting to report on someone this month, I'd enter the total outstanding debt as of today. So whether that's a current tenant or a former tenant that's moved out, you're going to enter that total outstanding balance, and then you're going to have to just make sure that that's updated every single month. So if you do have a former tenant, I'm assuming most people are owning property here in Canada somewhere, so you can report debts from up to the past 6 years within Canada. So even if this person's moved out and it's been 3 or 4 years, you can actually still report that debt to those bureaus, and it'll continue to get updated on a monthly basis in form of a trade line until you report that debt is being paid. So the one caveat here is for those former tenants, they do receive those email notifications. It informs them of the debt, asks them to reach out, lets them know it will have impact of their credit. It's a one-time payment. So some of these, if you're a premium member, it's a one-time payment of $99. And this, of course, might work within days. We see that sometimes work within minutes, but sometimes it can take a couple months. Credit is one of those interesting aspects that not everybody knows how much it matters until you need it. And so what we encourage you is to take advantage of those communication tools. Make sure you're trying to communicate with the tenant. Make sure that information is actually getting shared and reported to those bureaus. So making sure that you have things like their date of birth, their correct email address, their name spelled correctly, that you have, if you do have a social security or SIN number in Canada, I guess, then you can input that information just to make sure that it is actually having the impact, either positive or negative, that you're looking for. And we've found this to be extremely effective in recovering a bunch of those outstanding debts that landlords do have.
Cool. I'm going to take this to two places, but Chris, do you got a burning comment on the tip of your tongue that you want to ask?
No, I was just going to bring up a couple of scenarios as we go here, because I want to get Grant to tell a couple stories here. So
okay. Well, before we get to those one battles, so we've been starting to do a simulcast now. Not only do we broadcast the Alberta landlord community that we're on right now, we also have the Saskatchewan landlord community. So question number one, does this apply to one province only, or is this Canada wide that I can report debts on tenants? How does that work?
Yeah, we operate in every province other than Quebec.
Cool. So folks across the board, this applies to you if you're a landlord and you've got debts owed. Next
also
question.
the US.
And the US. Okay,
yeah, and the
go.
US. So yeah, not a problem there.
Very, very
so
cool.
how come Quebec doesn't apply?
They've got different regulations as far as what it means to operate a business there.
So basically different for everything.
However, if they're reported in Alberta and someone moved to Quebec, it still follows their credit, does it not, through Equifax?
That's right.
Yeah. So you're not, just because someone moves to a different province doesn't mean you're still not going to be successful reporting to their credit. So
I'll probably clarify. They can't report the credit that would have occurred if they lived in Quebec.
That's right.
The right way to put it.
That's the correct way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So next question. We have basically two walks of or types of landlords that typically join our page. We've got the proactive landlord that is either a new investor, just got their first rental property, or they're a seasoned landlord that they're wanting to continue their education. Or we've got a landlord unbeknownly just kind of jumped in the business and unfortunately got burnt, and now that they're trying to figure out a solution to their pain point or the trouble. They come on my group. They've got debts owed from say 3, 4, 5 years ago. Can I still claim that?
Yes, you can. So this was mentioned earlier. You don't need a judgment, which was especially important during COVID. A bunch of the delays that we saw across the country and actually getting any sort of judgments or monetary orders. So the way that works, MacKenzie, given your situation, you have someone that comes in, they've got a tenant that moved out 4 years ago and still owes them money. So basically what they do is they create an account on the platform. They would enter those tenant details, enter that outstanding balance. They'd turn on our product called Collect, it's a one-time fee for $100 for our premium members and $200 for our basic members. And that debt would continue to be reported, and as well as those email notifications would be sent until they update the debt as being paid.
Okay, very cool. To confirm, how far can we backdate if we have rent sold? How far can we go back?
6 years.
Platform?
Yeah,
6 years. Okay, that's a long time. That's phenomenal. Yeah. Now, I know you guys can go after damages, but there's some special requirements to remove the subjective value that people might place on what damages might cost to replace. How do you guys go about incorporating the ability to claim for damages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're hitting all the good topics here. This is excellent. You've done this before. So damages can't typically be reported. So what we allow you to report is rent and utilities, or whatever is explicitly outlined in the lease. So we mentioned this earlier, you do require a written lease. Often it'll say, a percentage of utilities, maybe a fixed cost, typically has that rental amount. That's the amount or the debts affiliated with that you can report. Mm-hmm. Damages can only be reported if you do get a judgment or a monetary order. So going back to your example, you have a tenant from 4 years. Let's say you just happened to get a judgment for them. You had been claiming they owed you $5,000. Now the judgment includes damages, and all of a sudden that jumps up to $10,000. You could update that balance to reflect that. Perfect. It doesn't mean you have to update it. You could, if you are waiting until you get a judgment, if that is something you so choose to do, then you just simply update the balance that is affiliated on that monetary order or judgment. And that's how you can include damages.
Okay. Awesome. We got some questions coming in, folks. If you are listening and this sounds super confusing and we're jumping over the place, ask the question. Let's get up right now. You're probably not the only one with the same question as when I first learned about the service too. I've had the chance to sit down with Grant and a few others and Zach as well, and I've asked them lots of questions. So something that I'm now more comfortable with, but I've already asked hundreds of questions over the chances I've had to sit down with these folks. So right now, Facebook user, I'm not sure who that is. Maybe Chris can give
That's
me
Bajit.
Bajit. Okay. So Landlord Credit Bureau will collect. Are you guys a collection agency? Here's a good question. How do you, if not, like, yeah, are you guys a collection agency?
We're not. Yeah, we're not a collections agency. We don't operate a collections agency. So what we do is we allow landlords the ability to report rental payments and debts to credit bureaus, and there are notification tools that we send out on your behalf. So if we don't handle payments, we don't negotiate on your behalf, we don't do skip tracing, we don't do any of those sort of things. So
Okay.
Chris,
You're a bridge. Yeah, you're a bridge to getting the tenant and the landlord back communicating again, like you said earlier.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
a motivational factor.
Mhm.
Touch my credit.
Yeah, we offer a portal service, right? So a lot of these people affiliate credit, and I mean, some of our services sound complicated because it is in many aspects. And you know, when you're looking at how you can actually report that information to the credit bureaus, that's essentially what we've built. Those individual landlords and property managers can now have the same power that credit card companies, auto dealerships, mortgage brokers, everyone's had for years and years. And so that's where there's just a bunch of steps to actually get things set up. But sounds complicated. When you get into the system, it's fairly intuitive to walk through.
Okay.
So Grant,
next
I
logical
actually,
question.
oh, sorry, Grant, I actually put a lot of people, I tell them, I say, use a landlord credit. Somebody's always looking for, well, who can do the collection? What's a collection agency? And I tell people, I said, use a landlord credit bureau. And they say, well, they do the collections. And what we're trying to point out here, folks, is that no, they don't do the collection for you. And Grant, you'll understand my humor as you get to know me, but I think a good analogy, folks, is the Landlord Credit Bureau and this program that we're presenting to you is like having Uncle Guido standing behind you, looking over your shoulder, and the tenant goes, well, maybe I should pay that. So
former law enforcement Chris's analogies. Continue on, Chris.
yeah, so you got to have a little bit of fun with it, but at the end of the day, you've got a kind of an invisible stick that's going to help you collect your debt, and it's a very cost-effective way, is what I tell people, to use this system. Because you fire this out to a collection agency, the older the debt, the more they're going to take. They take up 40, 50, even 60% or higher. So you're looking for, a $10,000 collection, and you're going to give up $6,000 if they collect it. So why wouldn't you use this system when it's going to cost you $100 or $200 to enter it, and then you sit back and wait?
And
okay.
Yeah, and
right.
You are correct, right? The collections agencies do have their place. They offer a different service, and they take a good chunk of what they actually recover. There are limitations, obviously, to what we offer. There's no guarantee of collecting, whether that is through our system or through collections agency. So are there distinctions, and you do have to make a call for what's going to be the best for you in your situation, and we do understand that. You said an important thing, Chris, and that's, you can always start with us, right? Like, we're a low cost option and we're very effective. And in fact, we've got a better track record than a lot of collections and than the collection industry as a whole, because credit follows you forever. And forever meaning the next 6 or 7 years, depending on where you're living. But, it impacts your ability to get anything from a cell phone or anything from a car, a mortgage, those sort of things. Mm-hmm. And so it provides a really strong motivating tool to bring the landlords and tenants together to actually come up with an agreement.
Is it fair to say that you basically get 30 days to get this paid without it affecting your credit once it's been reported, right? Because you send out emails. Is that fair to say?
That's right.
Is that a motivator?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. I got a thought here. I definitely want to get out before I forget, because it's so in this point. And then Beljet, if I am saying your name hopefully correctly, I'll go back and ask your questions as well. I hear so often on our page that people say, "Oh, I don't bother going after this tenant. He or she or they are a deadbeat. It's like trying to get blood, squeezing or getting blood from squeezing a stone," or however that saying goes. And I kind of agree with it, but I don't, because, as you said, Grant, up to was it 6 years we can go back and bad date debt. People change. Someone's not a deadbeat. I'm sure if that's the politically correct term, or not, tough to get money from today. 3 or 4 years down the road, if they get their life together and they go to get that loan to get that car so they can go drive to work, and they can't, they get denied on that loan application because there's $600 or $6,000 owed on that trade line. They're going to want to call you to get that fixed so they can move on with their life, and you'll be surprised. I know Gord, if you're still on the show here when you signed in early, we'll tell Gord's war story, how he signed up, and I think it was within 24 hours or it was 2 hours, I can't remember. He was already getting a phone call and had an e-transfer. So it's very effective, as you said, Grant, and we've had firsthand testimonials on our group, which we think is just great. So let's help her out. Let's help out Valjet right now. So she's asking the $1 million question. Okay, so how does the tenant pay? How do I get paid if I'm owed money? And right now, her situation that she's working on right now is I have unpaid rent and utilities and a judgment and a hearing this Friday for damages. So perfect scenario, right? Lots of us in this scenario on this page all the time. Just walk us through an example, Grant, of how from being reported, how the process would unfold and how would I eventually end up with money back in my bank account.
Sure. So let's assume that you haven't signed up for the platform before. So you'd go into front lobby, you'd create a free account, have to verify your identity. You have, considering your hearings on Friday, I'd probably recommend you enter the tenant details after that time, so you're not updating things, within a day or two of entering the platform. Yeah, exactly. After Friday, when you have your hearing, you'd all of a sudden have that dollar amount that they owe you. You'd go into the system, you'd enter the basic tenant details. So we require first name, last name, date of birth, and an email address in order to share that information with the bureaus. You can enter, there's their former tenant, they've moved out, so you would enter that move out date, and you'd enter the balance that was indicated on that judgment. You can then choose to be copied on those emails, simple toggle, and you'd turn on the collect, which would then start the reporting process. So
okay.
once
I was going to stop you there, Grant.
Sure.
So in this situation, this landlord has rent, utilities, and now possibly a judgment for damages. So that's 3 different amounts. Am I putting those in 3 different places, or am I just dumping it into one place?
It's all in one place. Yeah.
Okay.
So we just look at the total outstanding balance. We don't break it up, and the bureaus don't break it up either.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So you punch this in all the lease specifics to this tenant, their name, their email. It's all punched in the system. I've clicked sent now. I'm assuming an email's gets sent off to the tenant. Now what? Do I wait? What would I expect to happen next if it's a good outcome with this new platform?
I mean, good outcome. So they would receive within the day, they'd receive an introduction email. Then within a day after that, because there's a debt here, they would receive a notice that there is a debt, which kind of gives an indicator of the amount, but not the specifics. So it kind of prompting them to reach out to you to actually view that information is accurate and to make a payment. So let's say that they do see it within a couple days. They open the link. You can see that they've viewed the email. Then most likely they will reach out to you as their landlord or the property manager. And at that point in time, they may say, hey, I know I owe you $10,000. I can't pay you all of this right now. Can we negotiate a payment plan? And at that point in time, then the tenant would actually be paying you directly. So
okay, so I could get e-transfers from the tenant,
totally.
or they're showing up on my doorstep the duffel bag of cash. Awesome, I'm getting paid. Okay, I've received my unlabeled duffel bag. It's full of all the Canadian colored bills. It's not monopoly money. I'm happy. What happens next, Grant?
Yeah. So as they're paying off the debt, you would update it down. If they bring with a bag full of cash, pay it all in one swoop. Awesome. You just mark that as 0. The feature automatically turns off. No more emails, no more reporting to credit bureaus. What would end up happening is we would send one last push to the credit bureaus, which just closes that account in good standing. So what that means is that, it's no longer getting updated. Any debts have been paid off. Nobody's reporting on it anymore. Now, the one distinction I will make is if there is a current tenant, there is an extra incentive that you have in your pocket. So if I'm renting from MacKenzie and I have a debt and, he signed up through Front Lobby. I don't want that debt to actually go and impact my credit because I'm looking to buy a house in a year or two. As part of that negotiation, I can actually help build my credit as long as I'm paying according to a payment plan. And we saw this all the time during COVID. So some people fall in hard times. It happens. There's debts that incur. We want to make sure that the landlords are getting paid because your mortgage is everything. All your bills are still due. And so one thing you could talk through with your tenants is, if you agree to this payment plan, we'll report you're supposed to report those payments as occurring on time. And so it can actually help them build their credit through that situation as long as they're paying according to plan. Of course, if they ever deviate, then you can report that debt. But it's a really positive motivator for both parties just to make sure that agreement is come to, and then you can work through it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna highlight that point you brought up, Grant, because I think it's so important. I've personally have done this. I've had a tenant who said that they were tight on payday, they were short, they couldn't do full rent. So I got 3/4 of the rent on the first, and they told me by the next pay period, so whatever it was, two Fridays from that point, that they'd pay the remaining amount. So that's a payment plan, is how to get the total amount paid by what days and when. They did that, and I loved it. I honored it. I didn't even touch Landlord Credit Bureau. They were getting reported. So from a credit perspective, they've always paid rent on time, even though they had to make a payment arrangement with me. And they were quite happy to do so because, of course, their record looks good. I'm still getting paid. I'm in the know. I don't mind working with the tenant if I get a heads up and they took the time to talk to me to make that arrangement. It's when you're in the dark, it's after the first and you haven't seen anything, you haven't heard anything, you don't know what's going on.
That's right. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Good question for you, Grant. You ready?
Right.
Okay, so when we're reporting, sometimes landlords aren't the best at getting all the information required. We really promote it and preach it here and what needs to be done, and using some of our other partners like Single Key and whatever to get proper information, such as birth dates. You know what? Sometimes you get lucky and you get a social insurance number or another thing. Can you still report if you don't have a birthday?
No, you can't. So if you don't have a date of birth, then they basically won't match to a credit report. So there's no way to report that information. Now, as part of the sign-up process, you can actually send the tenant will receive an introduction email, which has a link that they can log in and view the information. So the tenant can actually enter their date of birth throughout that process, and then it gets added to that lease record. And so then it can actually be reported. So we see that a lot in positive instances, right? Where someone does want to build their credit, where they'd sign up, they enter their date of birth. But of course it can work on the debt side as well. They're just less inclined to do so. One thing that we often recommend to people say, oh, I don't have the date of birth, especially if it's from a couple of years old. I'm often surprised if when you do look through the paperwork, there's often a photocopied driver's license or something that does have that date of birth. But if you truly don't end up having it, then unfortunately that information won't be shared with the bureaus.
Right on. So this is where I've told people, it's very important that you have somebody taking over your $500,000 investment and you don't know who they are. Like, my first question is, did you identify them? And, well, I got their pay stub. Okay. Could they have picked that out of the garbage of the neighbor and brought it to you and said, here's my pay stub? And did you do the proper verification? Here's the thing, folks, is take a picture of their identification and put it in your file. It's done. You have the driver's license, so you have all the information you need in order to report to the credit bureau. Mm-hmm. It's pretty simple, and that's important. You identify who's living in your house. Yeah, and you want to compare the picture. Just because they hand you a driver's license, how many of you actually take and look at it, hold it up, and look at the person? Is that the same person, or was it a brother, or was it a cousin that kind of looked like him and it was a 10-year-old picture? Who knows? Those are things you got to make sure you do.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. You got more?
Yeah. How long this is a question I had. I wrote down a couple here as we went along. How long is a bad debt reportable on your system? So how long does it stay on once it's reported?
Oh, how long does it stay on? That's a good question.
It's 6 years that it will be reported. Now within Front Lobby, that's your information, so that doesn't get deleted. It's for your internal record keeping purposes, so we won't wipe the data there. but bureau that is shared with the information that's shared with the bureaus will only stay on for 6 years.
Okay,
And
so
that
if
sounds
I
like
have a
that's probably
six,
that's like a typical, that's typical for credit reporting probably.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
so if I have a 6-year-old debt, there's no point in reporting it because you're not going to accept it. It'll just go on front lobby, but won't go to the credit bureau because it's old in 6 years.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna riff on that, Chris. I'm gonna hop in and I'll give it back to you because this is where I was gonna take my question was, where is it? Here, Beljet kind of asked this question too. Is you just thought, Chris? Hey, if my rent is older than 6 years, it's not worth reporting it, and I would differ. So let's highlight this point here, Grant. We have the Landlord Credit Bureau, which is a legal database for bad tenants. Or good tenants. It's a legal database of good or bad tenants. We've purposely on our group do not track or have a list of bad tenants because there's a legal gray area. We don't do it. Just full stop there. So Chris raises a really great question about, well, why should I bother reporting something that's older than 6 years if it won't affect their credit? But you guys have this database. So can you tell us the differences between this database and the credit reporting and why us landlords should be reporting to this database?
So the Landlord Credit Bureau is a reporting agency, so it's bound by the same regulations that Equifax does. So no records would exist within Landlord Credit Bureau that are older than 6 years. So
Okay.
that's why I say that you can use it on the front lobby platform, but it won't exist in Landlord Credit Bureau and it won't exist on Equifax.
Will front
Sorry, repeat
lobby
that again?
notify someone who? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, the front lobby wouldn't notify anybody. So let's say you've been using the system for, let's just say it's been 10 years. So you have a bunch of old tenants that you'd reported on. So that information would still be visible to you within the platform, but you wouldn't be able to send it to the credit bureaus.
Right.
Equifax or Landlord Credit Bureau.
So after 6 years, the debt's done. Basically, no one anywhere is going to find out about it unless they somehow are able to use user reference, which they shouldn't, and then you can report. You can tell whoever then, 6 years ago you ripped me off.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Okay. We've got this question popping up, and I think it's a very valid one. Is what is the difference with front lobby, the Landlord Bureau, single key, neighborly? How does that all tie together? So people have asked.
I'll take this one offline, Chris. It's a lengthy explanation. I think while we've got Grant's time, we'll keep it.
Well, I just to tell people, the short of it is they're two different systems, and the other people, look to Grant for help. Is that a fair way to say that in a layman?
Okay, well, 30-second walkthrough right now. Neighborly and single key are most similar in the fact that they're an online digital application. You give a link to a tenant, they go online, they fill out everything, you get a report back. You don't physically have to collect the information from the tenant, which is great because you're not getting messy scribble print and you're not dealing with that process. It's all done. Landlord Credit Bureau, now front door, should change my lingo here, is they do credit checks. It's just simply, as we confirmed today on the show, simply a credit check. So folks that have their own application, this is a very good value add at a cheaper price than say incorporating an enabling or a single key. Also, the whole big crutch of what the Landlord Credit Bureau does of the reporting with Equifax that I think is huge is it gives us, the landlords, the ability to report monthly payment habits, good or bad, and we can positively or negatively affect a tenant's credit score. Credit scores don't exist, and that's the crutch of it. So single key neighborly, very good upfront for due diligence, ongoing support. This is where front lobby comes in. How you guys should use this on a monthly basis because it's such a key differentiator. And I'll go into more detail of the nuances of all that, but that's it high level. And okay, and
all very complementary of each other, and
yes,
if that answers those questions. This questions popped up quite a bit tonight, so that's as far as we'll go on that, guys, and we'll just keep rolling with some of these other questions.
Okay, let's take this one again, and I believe this is budget. Oh man, we said it 3 different ways. Okay, anyways, Another $1 million question. I have his driver's license. What can I do with that? Well, that's great. That's probably. Would you use any of that information, or did it, well, you get the birth date off of that, and that's the big thing you just said, right, Grant?
Yeah, birth date and proper spelling of the name. So usually what people have on the driver's license is what is actually going to exist with the bureau. So it's good to kind of copy that explicitly that they have on their driver's license or the ID that you take.
So takeaway here is get full legal name, because at the end of the day, that's how they get reported into the credit bureau.
Okay, spin off of that. The name on the driver's license doesn't match the judgment due to a spelling error, typo, whatever. Will you still accept that, Grant?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's ID gets verified, right? So if there's reasonable course when we go through our investigation on the dispute, we'd look to see kind of what the train of events are. And, if we're not sure that it's on the same person, then of course you can report on that information. But if you can actually show that is the correct person and kind of with reasonable explanation, then yes, you would be able to report on that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
Gord's asking another question here. He says, can we pull our own credit off the front lobby?
Well,
That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I will say no, because you're not, the purpose of it is not to allow consumers to have access to their own credit. So the answer would be no.
I can add on to this because I've tried some things. I tried to do my own application on Neighborly when I first signed up, and they wrote me a polite email saying that their contract with Equifax doesn't allow self-checking of one's credit score. So it's contractually they can't provide that information of the person requesting it.
It's an interesting concept. Just for clarity, because probably most of you haven't seen the tenant side of our platform, we don't have the ability for tenants to pull a credit check on themselves either. So we find most tenants will use something like Burwash to monitor their credit report or something through a bank, but that functionality doesn't exist within our system.
Okay, I'm gonna say, okay, you go, Chris. You're faster than me.
Yeah, Speljeet again. She says, is there anything to report to the registries or court orders so that they can't renew their licenses? The simple answer is no. That doesn't work that way. You
Maybe
just want to go ahead.
I can add on that. So Gord Heisler and I talked about this. One of the tenants he reported had a professional accreditation. I think he was like a geologist or was a member for their education. They were members of some professional association. Because they had outstanding, it's like you can't renew your driver's license or your car registration until you pay all your speeding tickets at the registry. He had told me the guy was mad when they phoned up because he couldn't renew the association wouldn't renew his affiliation in good standing because he had this trade line on his credit score. So I'm assuming that's per professional association how they handle that, but that was a scenario that I heard come up, so I thought that was very interesting.
No, that is, but to try to attach it to a government agency, the answer is no there. That'll kind of defer to spousal type situations and non-payments where they can come after you for that.
Yeah, totally. Okay.
Where are we at? Top of the hour, so we should look at getting some of this wound up here.
Yeah, sure. There was a question, can you track a person's whereabouts with a driver's license? We'll take that question. We should get our eviction experts back on. It's been a bit. We've got two gentlemen, Don Gray and Rob Bowe. They are very much experts in that matter. That would be a question for those guys. Yeah, I guess that's kind of it, Grant. We've I know you're hanging out in a much warmer climate called Houston than it was here in Canada. So thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We really appreciate in this after hours conversation of all things cool with Front Lobby. Any other last things you want to wrap up with before we let you go?
Yeah, absolutely. I always appreciate coming on time and appreciate your group. So next week for Black Friday, we're launching a special promotion. Want to give it to your group first. Basically, if you sign up for an annual membership, we're giving away a free credit check. And so I think there's a chat here that I will just write in the promo code.
Sure. Yeah. We'll share it
So
right now.
if either you're a monthly membership and you upgrade to an annual, or you just sign up net new for an annual, then you can enter BLK event for the Black Friday promo. You can start entering that today, and it'll be good all the way through Cyber Monday if you're looking to upgrade. And again, that's an annual membership, and you get a free credit check.
There you go, guys. Get a discount. You heard it here first. So let's end on a sneak peek here. Since I want to long as if you can give me something here. You guys are always working on new things coming down the pipe. Give me something you haven't talked about anywhere else. Some exclusive content. What do you guys got cooking?
I did. I just gave you the coupon code before anybody else.
Oh, okay. I was gonna try to see, like, you guys gonna got new cool features coming. I just curious.
Yes, we do.
What's going on?
Yes,
Okay.
we do. That I will say that with a smile and leave you wanting more. How about that?
Okay. All right.
I mean,
I'll let you off the hook this time then. We'll come
what I
back.
will say is that groups like this and the feedback that we get from our members highly influences what we do. And so we want to hear from you. We want to hear what features you're looking for. We want to hear what we're doing well, areas that we can improve. So never be afraid to reach out, or if you got suggestions, we do want to hear it, because this is really built around this type of community to meet your needs and to make sure that you feel supported in this industry and that we can really improve the rental industry for all. So we have our ideas, but we always want to hear what you think. MacKenzie, that's you and Chris as well.
So that's super cool. No, that's cool. I mean, folks, you guys, if you don't already know it, I assume you guys got a new Facebook page, because we have your current old Landlord Credit Bureau page in the group. But community members, these partners are directly embedded in the page. You guys got the mechanism to provide direct feedback to improve, get better service from their products and services, and or support. Sorry, and use that mechanism to your advantage. It helps everyone around. You get better service. They improve the product for the next person, and we continue that cycle. So it's great stuff. We'll wrap it up. Chris, you give us our final word.
Yeah, just guys, use these systems we got in place. Mac and I spent a lot of, this was a thought one day when Mac and I met each other, and today here's where we are. We've got some amazing connections. We've got some great group partners. We have a lot of influence now with this group as a group because of our membership, and using these systems and giving these inputs and tagging me. If you have a question, ask the question on the page and tag the Landlord Credit Bureau, tag our other sponsors, our collectors, Rob and Don. They'll answer it for you. And we've done our best that we can to make sure we're giving you some quality contact and people that can help you do this job. And tonight, I'll tell you, as soon as I can, and the winter's coming, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get myself organized. I may be doing very well with my payments with my renters, but my day's coming too, right? So I'm going to be well organized and set myself up and be in a good place, because there's some great stories out there with Gord Heisler, Andrea Workington, who've used your system, and they have got money collected back within hours and within days. So it works. I encourage people, get online with this stuff, guys. It's a cost of doing business, and it's a very cost-effective way of collecting your debt.
Fantastic. Well, I don't know where you are, Chris, in Alberta, how you still have sunlight. I've got pitch black out my windows here, but on that note, let's wrap up our show. Folks, this is the only show dedicated to landlord in Alberta, the Alberta Landlord Shoptalk. I'm your host, MacKenzie Wilson, alongside Chris Noble, and our guest tonight, Grant Burwash, Vice President over at Front Lobby, formerly Landlord Credit Bureau. We'll see you guys next time.
Stick around, Grant. We'll chat up.